Good morning and welcome to the Wyoming State Library's webinar series. Today we're looking at AI, practical AI in libraries. 1 second, please. Okay, my name is Paige Bradenkamp, and I am the e-resources and school library consultant at the Wyoming State Library. I'm here with Megan Bratton and Conrado Saldivar from the Natrona County Library. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. This webinar will be recorded, and I will send a link out to all of the registrants, and it will also be posted on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel. The slide deck will also be available at the end of the webinar and on the YouTube channel. Today's format is going to be primarily Megan and Conrado presenting, and there will be time at the end for questions. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please type them into the question box. That won't be viewable by the participants, but we will see it, and Megan and Conrado will answer questions as they can at the end of the presentation. There were a lot of questions submitted via the registration form, and Megan and Conrado will try to get to as many as possible. Some of them might be better off in an upcoming webinar, depending on what the question really centered on. With that, I am going to turn it over to Megan and Conrado, and we're in for a great presentation. And thank you all for being here.
All right. So yeah, welcome to leveraging ChatGPT in libraries. When I was initially approached about doing this presentation, I thought it was just AI in libraries in general, but it turns out there was a lot of interest on specifically ChatGPT and how people can use it in their jobs. So that's going to be our focus today. And even narrowing it down just to that, it's still a lot of information to go through, so I apologize if it feels like I'm going really fast. ChatGPT is relatively new, and there are a lot of people who are kind of scared of it and what it means, but I have found it truly to be a remarkable tool that helps me find efficiencies and produce better work, and hopefully after this presentation you will feel the same way. So let's get started. All right, a little bit about me. I'm Megan, and I'm doing the first portion of this presentation. Conrado will be speaking later about using ChatGPT with cataloging and text services. I am the PR and marketing manager for the Natrona County Library in Casper, Wyoming. We serve a population of around 60,000 people, and we're actually one of the few libraries in the state that has a dedicated staff person for marketing and public relations purposes. I know that there are probably a lot of you on this call who wear multiple hats in your roles, so that maybe you're part librarian, part marketer, or maybe you come from a large library district with entire teams dedicated to marketing, or you work in a library and have absolutely nothing to do with marketing. That's fine too. This presentation isn't about using ChatGPT for marketing purposes, but it is about using these tools for creating content, synthesizing complex ideas and information, and the things you should consider when using these tools. When used effectively, I think it can save you lots of time, no matter what role you're in. So let's get moving. This is a brief history of artificial intelligence. AI is not new. The term artificial intelligence was first coined in 1956 by John McCarthy. And early AI research focused on problem solving and symbolic methods. Many of you have probably heard of the Turing test by Alan Turing. It came out at this time, and it evaluates a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior. But after that initial enthusiasm, people kind of lost interest because there were really high expectations but limits on what technology could actually do. But in the late 1990s and 2000s, there was a bit of a revival, driven in large part by the advent of the internet. And this is when we start to see machine learning and neural networks. In recent years, we've seen exponential growth in AI capabilities. which is highlighted by breakthroughs in deep learning, natural language processing, and computer vision. I don't know what all of those are, but I do know that natural language processing is kind of the key to what we're talking about today. Some major milestones in that time include IBM's Watson winning Jeopardy in 2011, and the success of AlphaGo in 2016. For those of you that don't know, AlphaGo was the first computer program to defeat a human professional Go player. And Go is actually an ancient Chinese board game known for its complex strategy and endless number of possible positions. So it starts to pop up in lots of industries, and you can really see the transformational impact of AI on society during that time. And that brings us to now. So before we can really talk about GPT, we need to talk about how it's different than other common forms of artificial intelligence. ChatGPT is a form of generative AI. And generative AI is trained to create new data rather than making a prediction about a specific data set. So, to make that make sense, Google search engines are an example of an AI model that predicts and ranks websites based on relevance. So when you type in a search, it predicts which sites are going to be most relevant to you and ranks them and gives them back to you. But generative AI creates content. It also learns to generate more objects that look like the data it was trained on. So that's why it starts to sound like a human. So these systems can produce a wide range of outputs, including text, images, music, and even video, depending on what they're designed and trained to do. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to talk mostly about text outputs, but it is really amazing what some of these other outputs are doing, and I would encourage you to do some research because it might blow your mind. You may also have heard about some of the image generators that are out there kind of causing a stir. Some of the bigger ones are DALL-E and Midjourney. I'm sure those have a purpose in the library setting. I just haven't spent a ton of time exploring that. But it's also important to note that with those image generators, they really struggle with fingers and text. So be forewarned. All right, so what is ChatGPT? GPT stands for a generative pre-trained transformer. In other words, it's a big language model, a large language model that's trained on copious amounts of text data, and it is capable of producing a human-like response to a given prompt. But ChatGPT is an AI chatbot and web application that runs on GPT's language model, and anyone can access it. It is designed explicitly for chatbot applications, and it, like I said, it generates responses in a human-like manner. There are lots of chatbots out there. ChatGPT is not the only one. Google's got one called Bard. There's one called Poe, Zapier. Most of them are free. And I think Microsoft has got a lot of stuff in the works as well. So you're not limited to ChatGPT, but ChatGPT does use this GPT language model. It currently has two main offerings. ChatGPT does. There's GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. They're both large language models created by OpenAI. GPT 4 is the newest release, and it's a more advanced version of 3.5. 3.5 is free, and 4 is available by subscription for $20 a month for an individual. The free version is an awesome option for familiarizing yourself with the technology, and it will do most of the things you need it to do. GPT-4, though, gives you more accurate responses. It generates images, it browses the web, it analyzes data and code. I believe it does, like you can dump your writing in there, be it fiction, research, 5-paragraph essay, whatever, and ask for feedback, and it'll give you writing feedback. And it also allows for customized bots or they call them GPTs, and gives you access to the API key for further development and customization. And just as a disclaimer, I do use ChatGPT 4, but I will today, when we're doing some examples, toggle between the two to show you the differences. All right. Getting the response you want. In order to get the responses that you want from this chatbot, you got to make sure you're asking the right questions. Our input is called a prompt, and there is an art to it. Creating the magic prompt in ChatGPT involves being specific with your request, providing relevant context, using clear guidelines, and experimenting with different phrasings. As librarians, most of us are already familiar with the complexities of performing a good search, from truncation to Boolean. When conducting research, we know that it can take time to find the perfect search terms to return what we need. But every time you perform a search that doesn't give you what you need, you essentially have to start over. But ChatGPT isn't like that. It's more of a conversation. So it doesn't forget what you just asked when you ask your next question or provide feedback. It learns over time. It learns you and will get better at providing the responses you want over time. It's pretty amazing. So while finding that magic prompt may be the key to getting the response you want the first time, you don't need to master that in order to get what you need. This QR code here, I highly recommend it if you're new to this. Scan it with your phone. It'll take you to a pretty thorough guide to crafting effective ChatGPT prompts, and it's a good place to start. Also important to note that much like Google, that also learns its user, ChatGPT responses are unique, and you will not get the same responses as me, even if you provide a verbatim prompt. And over time, your GPT learns from you, and your responses will look even more unique to you. So if you're following along today and going to do some of these examples with me, don't freak out if it gives you something different. All right, this is why you guys are here. So let's jump into the real life examples of using this tool in a library setting. You can think of it as your new virtual assistant. It'll enhance customer service and make you more efficient. All right, we're going to start with information and research assistance. For research support, librarians can leverage ChatGPT to streamline those initial stages of research or general inquiries. It's a great place to start, truly, any information-seeking task, as it synthesizes information and provides responses without you needing to click through different sites or resources to find what you want. I like to think of the differences between ChatGPT and search engines kind of as it pertains to recipes. So let's say you've got 3 ingredients in your fridge that you really want to use before they go bad. You could go to Google and say, give me recipes that include shrimp, Brussels sprouts, and pasta. And Google will give you a bunch of options that maybe have those, maybe also have items you don't have in your fridge. And then when you click on it, you've got to scroll through the author's life story before you can even get to the ingredient list and the steps. But with ChatGPT, you can put that same thing in and it'll just give you a recipe that you can either use if you like it, or you can say, nope, give me another one, and it'll give you another one. So, but for research purposes, we'll deviate from recipes. ChatGPT could also suggest relevant databases. For further research, it can provide summaries of key research articles, or you can ask it to offer a list of seminal works on the topic for further digging. And then also for information seeking, the library, there's a lot of information about the library that people either call in, they go to your website, but you can use GPTs for creating chatbots, not to be confused with ChatGPT, that live on your website to answer basic questions about library services, resources, and more. We used to have a chat service on our site, but it was staffed by humans, and we paid for it by the question. And we found that many people were using this chat functionality on our site when they were in the library, instead of just walking over to a staff person and asking that question. So it became cost prohibitive and really wasn't adding much value. So we got rid of it. But now with AI, it's something worth investigating again, because not only can it answer those basic questions and save your staff some time, you can train it to answer based on certain prompts. But it also expands your services, right? Beyond the hours that the phones are being answered. And it can reach some non-traditional audiences, people that might not call or come in otherwise. If you're interested in pursuing this, I went down a rabbit hole one day. There's a lot of stuff out there. So if you want to build a chatbot for your own site, what I have learned is you'll probably need to either work with a developer to build one, or you can choose from one of the many paid applications that exist. The most promising one I have found so far is Chatbase. But let me know if you find a great one. So now let's test it out. All right, so here we are in ChatGPT. As you can see, we are currently in 4, but you can toggle between the 2 here. I have created some custom bots over here, and here's a collection of some of the things I've been working on in the past. So they do eventually go away, I think. And you can't just come in and say, hey, can you find me the response you gave me on this date for this question? So this is a good way to keep things organized over here. If you're working on different projects, you can keep them in different chats and then refer back to them more easily to find the content that it created. And then these custom chat bots over here, like I made one, you can edit it and you can see how you create it, right? I told it a little bit about ourselves. We speak in the first person and we're referring to us. We say library with capital L. Familiarize yourself with these services. And so you can train different bots to serve different purposes and say, like, you are a creative content writer and knowledgeable marketing consultant for the library. So it knows if I ask this bot a question, it is going to give me a response as if it is a marketing consultant. So we won't do that for research purposes, but let's look at some examples. So let's say you have a patron come in that wants to know more about climate change impacts on agriculture. So we're gonna see what happens. We'll tell it to be concise for the point of this presentation. But it immediately starts giving you a response. It'll run its course. You can stop it. You can't submit a new prompt until it's done. All right, so that was pretty concise. But now we want to know some more about it. Can you suggest some relevant databases for further research? And it'll give you a response. All right, you get the gist. I'll stop it. Can you provide summaries of key research articles on the topic? So it's a conversation. I haven't had to repeat to it, I need you to give me summaries of key research articles on climate change impacts on agriculture. It knows that's what we're talking about. It's a back and forth. It remembers what we've already said. So again, and these little quotation marks here link to the source. So there were a lot of concerns about citing this. How do we know if the information is factual? How do we vet it? For things like this, research articles, it links to them. So you can go read that research article and provide accurate citations. I could ask it to offer a list of seminal works. I could ask it to expand on this one, say, expand on number 1, and it'll do that. So as you can see, you just start and then go from there. It's like cherry picking your way through research. All right, I will stop it because that is a lot, but it's still, if we weren't in a time crunch, I would say, oh, look how fast it goes. But since we're in a time crunch, it feels slow. Let's go back to here. On to the next one. Reader's Advisory. This is really cool. There's already lots of tools out there like Novelist and in-catalog read-alikes, but those are usually based on if you like this one book, you might like XYZ. But ChatGPT allows you to input several different titles and generate as many different recommendations as you want. If you want to put in a bunch of titles and say, give me one book that, for someone that likes all of these books, it can do that, or it can give you a list. It'll give you summaries, all of these things, so that you have that personalized interaction right then and there with your patron, and they can give you real-time feedback like, oh, I've already read that one. So you can say, nope, give me another one, or no, that doesn't sound right. So you can say back to ChatGPT like, nope, that wasn't what we were looking for, and it'll generate a new response. You can also type in exactly what a patron says they like to read without translating it into formats that work with other reader recommendation search tools. So you can just put real language in there, and it'll give you stuff back. And if you need a quick synopsis of a book you haven't read, or you need good discussion questions for a book club, it's capable of taking in huge documents or long text and quickly summarizing the main points. You can have it search within documents that you give it and much more. And it's a great way to synthesize complicated or dense content to make it more manageable to larger audiences. So let's try it. So this is utilizing, like I just showed you, a custom GPT. I made one called Book Buddy that's just for the purposes of reading recommendations. So it's a straightforward book recommendation assistant. And I gave it parameters. I'm going to give you a list of titles from patrons. Give me suggestions based on those titles. It checks if we've read the book, then it gives more, and it maintains a conversational and engaging style. So let's give it a try. All right. Let's say somebody comes in and says, all right, these are 3 books I've read recently, and I really like them. I'm copying and pasting and save time here. So suggest a book for someone who likes the following 3 titles: Lessons in Chemistry, The Christie Affair, and Chain Gang All-Stars. So this one, it tells you, if you liked all 3 of those, you're going to like The Night Circus. And here's why. It's got the same compelling narrative and unique storytelling found in those. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read it all to you. So I could say, give me another one. There you go. There's another one. So you get completely personalized feedback. Now, let's say someone comes in and they want you to give them suggestions based on what they like, not what they've read. So here's someone who likes romance, light mystery, easy reading books by female authors. Oh, and by the way, dragons. Here you go. Here's a book that fits all of those qualifications. Now, it is not vetting these based on our catalog. I have not found a way to make it so that it can search our catalog and provide feedback. So you will, as a librarian, need to keep that in mind and make sure if you're making these recommendations to a patron that you either offer it in the library or let them know it's not here, but here's a recommendation for you. So that's using Book Buddy, right? And that's based on GPT-4. But I'm going to show you a difference here with that same prompt, but in 3.5. It's a different book. Without digging into it, it still may be a good option. But let's do the first one with the 3 titles and see what it comes up with, so you can kind of see. So it's a different book. It still does it. It may not give you you know, the summaries that you want or all of that, but it still works. You just don't have the ability with 3.5 to really like train it for a specific purpose, but it'll still do the job. And it's free. Okay, back to here. All right, programming and event planning. ChatGPT is really a treasure trove of ideas and support for creating amazing events at the library. You can utilize it to brainstorm and outline diverse program themes and event ideas, keeping in mind community interests and needs. Then if you like one of the suggestions that it gives you, you can ask for more details or links to real life examples to help you plan it out. Let's say you're hosting a panel discussion, you can have ChatGPT create Q&As for you. Or if you're looking for a story time option that covers a specific topic, ChatGPT can even write a children's book for you. Then, after you've got everything planned, you can use ChatGPT to generate promotional content, such as engaging descriptions and social media posts to attract a wider audience. After the event, if you want to know how well you did, you can develop follow-up surveys or feedback forms to gather participant insights and improve future programming. So let's give it a whirl. All right, we'll go pretty broad. Give me some innovative library program ideas. Oh, this is 3.5. All right, so we'll just do it in 3.5. Innovative library program ideas that promote literacy in non-traditional formats. All right, here's 10 ideas. Cool. All right, audio storytelling stations. Let's go with number 4. Can you give me more info on how to make that happen? All right, you want to do audio storytelling stations? Here you go, step by step. Planning and designing the station, equipment and software, guidelines and prompts, training and support. Wonderful. All right. You can also, let's say you didn't like any of these suggestions that it gave you up here, these 10. You can say bad response, give it some feedback, and it'll give you a new option. So you'll see here it says 2 of 2. So you can go back to the first one, or so it doesn't get rid of the old one. It looks like it's pretty similar to the first one. But this isn't a great example of that, but you can have it regenerate the response, give it feedback, was this better, was this worse, and then still get back to that previous suggestion. So it likes feedback like that. All right, let's jump back over to 4, and let's say, all right, we've got a program coming up. Here's some details, basic details. Write an event description for a Valentine card making workshop at the library on February 10th at 2 p.m. Registration required and for adults only. So, all right, here you go. Here's a description. And it includes event details with placeholders. Where it doesn't have the information, it puts placeholders in there in those brackets so that you know that you need to go back in there and put that information. Same, here you go. So there's a description, but let's say that is not what I need. That was super long. Can you make it into a paragraph? There you go. So if you don't like the format it gives you, you can change it up. You could, all right, turn that into a tweet. There you go. So you don't have to start over. You can modify what already exists. It's learning from you. It's remembering. And if I had templates that I liked to work within so that these recurring events that had different topics but were the same essential event every month, I could tell it, hey, this is the template, update it with this new information, and it'll do that. So lots of opportunities with programming, coming up with ideas, creating supporting materials, all of that great stuff. All right, I realize I may be biased, but I think this is where ChatGPT really shines. So from social media posts and blogs to newsletters and e-blasts, ChatGPT is a huge time saver. You can even create content calendars and write press releases. And the key to any of these, though, is providing adequate information and requirements. This is a good place to test out your magic prompt skills. And you can also provide ChatGPT with examples to teach it your tone and voice. Like I've shown you, you can provide feedback as you go to regenerate responses. If you don't like what they gave you, you don't have to start over. And you can't hurt ChatGPT's feelings with harsh criticisms. You can also create seamless and unified voice across formats. So like I showed you, you can take one event and create lots of different things for it. You can create blog posts, Facebook posts, all of that, web copy, everything, so that no matter where someone is interacting with the information about your service, your program, any kind of update that's going on at the library, they're getting a message that sounds the same, the seamless message, one voice, all of that. So it's really great for keeping things cohesive. All right, I'm realizing this is taking a bit of time, so I'm going to go really fast through this. One way, like if you need ideas for social media, you don't already have to have I need a post about this specific thing. You can say, I need ideas. I need weekly Facebook posts for Black History Month that sometimes tie back to items in the library's collection. There you go. It tells you how to link it back to the library. Let's say, all right, this is great. All right, great. Write copy for Facebook or for week 1. There you go. Well, network area. That happens. You just regenerate it. If I didn't like the tone, I could give it feedback. I could say make it more playful, make it more austere, whatever. Another thing, I need print newsletter article ideas. And here's some feedback. The newsletter is distributed to library stakeholders, so it should be more thought leadership than library promotion. Great. It gives you a bunch of ideas similar to what I've shown you before. Pick one, say, all right, write an article on that one that's 250 words. And it'll do that. You can ask it to provide citations. You can specify its call to action. You can give it information on all right, I want you to incorporate this service that we offer into the post. It'll do that. And once you're done with a newsletter article, let's say you want to put it on the blog as well, there's a different format for blog posts. Tell it to do that. It'll do that. It'll include in-text citations and everything, the link to where the information came from, and then you can write a Facebook post for promoting it. So these are all really great ways to just create more content. All right. Moving on. School libraries. You can't forget them. In addition to research assistance and reader's advisory, which applies there's some other creative and innovative ways that ChatGPT can be used. From lesson plans to proofreading, I think there are a lot more things to be excited about than to fear when it comes to ChatGPT's impact on your students' education. Like I mentioned before, it can provide writing feedback. It can provide research help to get going. So I would embrace it because it's not going anywhere. But it is important to note that while it can generate text based on inputs, it doesn't have the ability to access specific resources directly. And you as a librarian play a crucial role in validating and providing the necessary resources based on its suggestions. So this collaborative effort between ChatGPT and librarians, I think it can really enhance the effectiveness of library services in a school setting. And I've included a bit.ly link here to a really awesome article in School Library Journal about some things that people are doing in schools. All right, we're going to breeze past the next ones. Here are some other ways that you can use ChatGPT for administrative tasks. You can have it, dump your team's availability for the month in there and have it schedule staff shifts, automate email responses to basic questions that you get over and over again. You can create internal reports, policy documents, meeting minutes, and streamline the communication and documentation processes. I think here for administrative and with staff training, it's a good place to use kind of the ability to take a huge document. For example, we had a facilities needs assessment that we did that was 100+ pages. I copied and pasted all of the text, dropped it into ChatGPT, said summarize it, break out this, search within this, what is this? It was able to search within that document for me and synthesize that information. So with staff training and professional development, you can create tutorials, provide summaries of new tools and policies, and language learning support for communication skills. Ramada's going to talk more about translation. It is a really good translator, but just something to keep in note, it makes your resources way more accessible if you can translate them to non-English speakers. And like I said before, Conrado will talk on cataloging and tech services. So here are some of the ethical considerations. There were a lot of questions that came in beforehand about this stuff. And honestly, I was kind of surprised because I hadn't thought about a lot of these things. But come to find out, there are a lot of things you should consider before integrating AI into your library work, both on an organizational and personal level. Ultimately, you are responsible for vetting everything before sharing it with your patrons or the public. So fact check site sources and make sure that the content is as free of bias as you can make it. And if something makes you uncomfortable, don't do it. Work with your manager to make sure you're both in agreement with how ChatGPT can and will be utilized, and seek out ways to use these tools to add value to your community. I've introduced this tool to my manager, so not only is she okay with me using it, but she uses it herself. And we're very honest, like, hey, here's something for you. I made this for you. I want you to know I spent 10 minutes on it on ChatGPT instead of hours. Like, this is just a jumping off point, and we're all on the same page, so it's great. I do think one of the big questions for any industry that a lot of people have is, will AI be a job destroyer? Quite the conundrum. If ChatGPT can streamline your work enough to condense a week's worth of work into half a day, does that mean you are then able or capable of doing 10 times more work, or that the library only needs 1/10 of you? I don't have an answer to this, but I also believe that most people are looking for ways to be more efficient in their jobs. So I consider ChatGPT as just one more way to help with that. There's concerns about the loss of the human touch if you are switching over to AI. There's privacy and confidentiality. But as far as patron data and privacy, ChatGPT only accesses information that it's given. So if you don't give it access to your backend, to your patron records and all of that, it doesn't have it. So just don't do that. And it doesn't have any way of getting there without you granting it access. And so ChatGPT is not connected to anything that could be harmful to our protected information. And I honestly don't even really know how I would do that without just exporting everything and dumping it in there, and that would be bad. So just be conscious of that. Our website, though, everything that's on our website is public, which we know that's the point of a website, so it's fair game. Bias, yep, something to keep in mind. But as I was thinking about this, there is inherent bias in pretty much everything we offer, from the books on our shelves to our research databases and all of that. So it's something you should be cognizant of anyways with what you're doing in your daily work. So keep that in mind with all of this. Transparency and accountability, sure, tell people when you're using it. I haven't really found an example yet in my work of where I felt that was necessary, where that transparency needed to be there. Because I proof everything it spits out to make sure it sounds like us and is factual. And you should do the same. Environmental impact, yeah, it uses big data centers with lots of power-hungry servers. If that concerns you, do something to offset it. So there's more to it. Like I said, that could be a presentation in and of itself. All right. That's the end of what I've got. And for the sake of transparency, this whole presentation was made with ChatGPT. And I use Canva as well. And Canva has AI capabilities. So there's another use for it. If you've got a webinar coming up, you can use ChatGPT to build the whole dang thing. All right, now to you, Conrado.
All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Megan, can you confirm real quick? Okay, thank you. All right, so practical applications of AI in libraries. This is the text services and cataloging part. This is very new to not only libraries and the world in general, but also very new to my experience in how we could potentially incorporate this or start incorporating this into my position in my department here at the library. So just really quickly, we're going to talk about MARC records, then we'll move on to a little bit of Dewey training that will most likely happen in the horizon here in my department. Like Megan mentioned, I will touch on translations and using ChatGPT to translate information to use in your library catalog. And then I'll talk a little bit about limitations that I experienced while I was trying to put together this presentation. My name is Conrado Saldivar. I'm Tech Services Manager here at the Natrona County Library. There's that information. So MARC records. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. So we are part of the WILD network. We are a statewide consortia of every public library and community college library in Wyoming, some school libraries and some special libraries. We all share one catalog and have approved cataloging standards that we use. We're also able to pull records in from OCLC and don't need to create very many original records. If we do have to create original records, we can send requests to the state library, to the bibliographic librarian over at the state library. Chantry does a great job of creating those for libraries who maybe don't have the ability to create original records. So very appreciative of that. I am in no way telling you to use AI, nor am I claiming to be an expert. AI, like Megan mentioned, it's not going to take our jobs right now. We're pretty secure, especially in the cataloging realm. We're just here learning how to use another tool to keep in our tool belt. Megan also mentioned that we have never imported our patron database into ChatGPT. Not only does it not belong to our individual library, but that's just not, that's a huge ethical concern and violation of the trust that our patrons provide to us. And generating some of the screenshots that I'm going to show you, I also didn't import anything into ChatGPT from our item database. So keep that in mind as well. I try to keep everything just in ChatGPT, and then I have screenshots from Circe's Workflow Symphony and then also ChatGPT, just so we can compare some of the records that we're going to look at. So I first started by asking ChatGPT to which fields are required to create an original MARC record for a book. This is the response that it spit out for me, basically the leaders, some of the more important fields. But notice at the very end, these are basic required fields for creating a MARC record for a book, depending on the specific cataloging rules. Like I mentioned, the WILD network, we have cataloging standards that we have to adhere to. Additional fields may also be required or recommended for inclusion. So it has a general understanding of MARC records and how those function. But it also recognizes that each individual library system or library does have to add or take away things, or do whatever they need to do to make sure that their records are being properly displayed for their patrons. One example that I ran through with When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This is one of my favorite books, so I thought it was a good example to start with. The record on the left is the record that is in our database, in the WILD database. So, and I chopped off the top part because it was a little hard to fit the screenshot in. Comparing them left to right, so they both have the author is correct, the title is correct. Summaries are there in the 520 field. Also, again, apologies, I had to cut that off. What was most interesting in this MARC record is the subject headings that it chose. So we only had in the 650 field those 3 subject headings in our catalog. But when we went over to ChatGPT and told it to create a MARC library record for When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, it responded, certainly, here's a representation of a MARC record for the book, blah, 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 blah. It spit this out, and it displays this as a CSS, so you can't download it and then just import it into your system. You do have to copy paste into your system line by line. But again, it calls this a representation that contains various fields with information such as author, title, publisher, publication date, physical description, subject headings, and more. One of the things that I noticed in here is that this did include the RDA content, so the 336 through 338 fields. These were correct. This book was published in 2016, so at some point, just because it is a pretty complete record, ChatGPT, this data was dumped into ChatGPT, and it was able to spit that back out with my prompt. However, when we look at a book that I did this a little bit, about a month and a half ago. So this prompt for House of Flame and Shadows, Sarah J. Maas's new book. So the record on the left is our current record that we have in our database. So at some point, I forgot to grab a record before I actually created or took a screenshot. But again, pretty complete record. It is a complete record. We pulled this over from OCLC. Has all the subject headings. Again, I had to chop off some of the top part. But if we look at the ChatGPT representation, again, it does call itself a representation. If we look at the ISBN, I tried to look up which book ISBN that was, and then I realized it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Like Megan mentioned, sometimes it'll tell you and give you placeholders for things that you have to update. So replace this with the unique identifier. Further down at the bottom, include a brief summary or description of the book. Excerpt, it tells you example.com/book page. So not a full record at all. And if you've seen that book, it's obviously not 400 pages. So again, I had ChatGPT take a look at or create this MARC library record in December before there was enough data for it, or someone had put the actual MARC record into ChatGPT for it to then spit back out. So yes, it can be used for MARC library records. However, you do have to go through and make sure that the representation that it spits out is accurate. Again, that book is a giant book, and there's no way that it's 400 pages. So some things you can take from this, and some things you can't. It was able to pull the 650s just from the title itself. It may have even looked at Sarah J. Maas's other books to get an idea of what it could spit out in the 650s. But again, this is a starting point. A really great option if people don't have the ability to pull from OCLC like we do. They can at least have ChatGPT give you the structure in some of the fields, and then you just kind of have to go and clean up the rest of that information. Dewey training. So another disclaimer, this is meant to kickstart the thinking process of assigning call numbers and not replace the actual formal process of assigning Dewey Decimal numbers to collections. So this training is something that I'm considering for a new staff member who will be starting next month. We've been focusing more on, her cross training has focused more so on getting a full understanding of MARC records and what we have to do to make them fit our cataloging standards, all of our item types and home locations, making sure that those are correct, because I can do Dewey until she's comfortable assigning Dewey numbers. So this is something that I'm hoping to incorporate just to start that thought process of how to start getting ideas of where books could potentially go in our collection before making a final decision on, based on our collection and our community, they should go in this location. So one of the things that I like about how ChatGPT responds to these prompts, so suggest DDC numbers to use for Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down by Ann Fadiman. So it really spits out the response that it gives you in, so like Megan had mentioned, natural language processing. So instead of us having to get up to here to the Dewey way of phrasing everything, we reduce that barrier and at least start, our vocabulary is able to, we're able to start learning Dewey Decimal with a lower requirement, that threshold of vocabulary. So it doesn't say 305.8 class year topics related to. So it just says this covers all of these different sort of things. And again, we will eventually break out DDC 23, our physical books, and go through the full formal process of Dewey Decimal classification. But this is just a starting point to start that training process. So again, at the bottom, each of these classifications offers a different perspective on the themes explored, blah, 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 blah. I followed this up with, again, Megan has showed us that you can respond to it and tell you and to give you a new answer. So alter that response based on this summary. And this summary I just pulled from Amazon and copy pasted it straight into there. So thank you for that, providing more context. It added more numbers to the end, really narrowing down to where it could potentially go, very specific information. Again, like Megan mentioned, you do have to go through and confirm that this information is correct because, for example, the 362.19 blah, 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 I know that we don't have anything, we don't go that far out for Dewey in our collection. So we would really have to go through, take a solid look at our collection and say, well, we do have similar books to this topic over here. So maybe it's best for our patrons because it can go in this section. That is where we should assign that book. And here's an example. So this is, we don't have that book in our collection, which is why I chose it. So 306.4 seems to be like the place where most libraries have it. You'll notice we have community colleges in there. I personally, having read the book, would go with Western Wyoming Community College at the bottom. I'd probably put it in the 362.1s. I don't know if I'd go out to the 097 because we don't go out that far in that general section, just for ease of access for our patrons. But just an idea of how we can start incorporating ChatGPT into assigning Dewey Decimal numbers before you really have to get into that academic, here's how Dewey works, and here's all of these class years and class theirs and whatnot. This was one that I didn't use ChatGPT for, but I wish I had thought of it before. So we had a book called Glitter Everywhere. We couldn't figure out where to put it. So last week I asked ChatGPT to, this is a children's book all about glitter. It's very informational. So it suggests decorative arts, which is where most libraries in Wyoming have it, except for us. Chemistry, 540s. I definitely don't agree with that. So I wouldn't assign it there. I think we put it in the 522s, if I'm remembering correctly. Economics, I also wouldn't put it there. So I'd have to really take a look and determine where we wanted to put it. Based on these options, I'd be more inclined to put it in the 745s crafts. Although looking inside the book, like it tells you, the most important classification would depend on the specific content and focus of the book. The book itself doesn't actually have any crafts to do with glitter. It just talks about glitter. So that's why we put it in the 522s. I also asked it to give me more information based off of a summary. So again, it kind of spit out the 745s, the 540s, but also because I mentioned, the summary mentioned, is glitter bad for the environment? It picked up on that word environment and put it into environmental studies in the 363s. Again, looking in the book, it's not mentioned very often in there, so I probably wouldn't put it in there either, but it starts that process of where can I put this book. Onto translations. I know we are getting close and we want to have time for Q&A. So like Megan mentioned, it can be used for translations. So I speak Spanish. I'm the library's only Spanish speaker right now. This screenshot here, this is the record that I had ChatGPT create or pull for that When Breath Becomes Air. So this is not the 520 field for the record in our current item. This is the one that ChatGPT created. So you can tell here it's a pretty lengthy summary. It's actually 321 words. So in our Spanish is our, we do have Spanish collection here at my library. We also have a Mandarin collection, but part of our cataloging standard says that our records have to be in English, the bulk of it, so we can have Spanish translations. But if you look in the cataloging source, the 040 field, subfield B, it has to have the ENG after it instead of the SPA. But when you're, for Spanish materials, some of the records we pull in from OCLC, We'll have Spanish subject headings, we'll have a lot of information in Spanish, but then the summary is all in English, which isn't a service. It makes it less accessible to Spanish speakers who don't know English. So we can use ChatGPT to take these English summaries and then translate them. And again, you don't have to, this is just a screenshot of what it spit out. So this was I told it translate this into Spanish. It pretty much spit it really great translation. It would save me a lot of time based off of what, so apologies. I could go through and translate those 321 words from English and then put them into Spanish, but I don't have time for that. So unfortunately, I'm split between a couple of other job responsibilities. But I did go through and was able to skim this in about 2-3 minutes and make sure that accents were there, that punctuation was done properly. I actually really liked this ChatGPT version. Obviously, a lot of us are familiar with Google Translate. I did also run that same English version in Google Translate. It does an okay job. It's a lot better than it used to be 10 years ago when I was in undergrad working on my Spanish degree. Messed up on some punctuation, at least that I could tell from first sight. But overall, it's good enough, but ideally ChatGPT would be what we use. So again, this is one way that we can, with keeping the record itself in English, we can add summaries and access points to the item record itself in other languages by using ChatGPT. And then finally, a couple limitations that I noticed while I was going through and looking at ChatGPT and cataloging and text services. So I asked it to create a specific MARC record based off of a direct link. So again, what you put into ChatGPT is what you're going to get out of it. So this time I started with, here's a link from Amazon, create a MARC record from the book at this link. This is for the book Crimson Dawn, the story of the Casper Mountain Witches. It actually only took information that it could find within that Amazon link. It didn't go search the web. It didn't go through its database. It took that exact prompt and said, here's this Amazon link, pull as much information as you can from it, and then create a MARC record. So as you can tell on the right-hand side, it's not correct at all. It didn't pull an ISBN because there was no ISBN. The link that I sent it to was a third-party seller. So that's why it's not really providing much information, because they didn't provide much information on Amazon. Volume unpaged, place of publication not identified, again, because it is pulling from the link information, not trying to look for actual content, actual metadata that it can pull into the MARC record. And again, the right side is our actual record that we have in our library. Another thing that I tried to have it do a couple of weeks ago. So for those of you who work in tech services, you know that it's either feast or famine. Sometimes boxes arrive all at once and your carts are jam-packed. Sometimes, like right now, at least in my library, our carts are pretty empty. So I was wondering if there was a way that I could have ChatGPT create a schedule for ordering for our selectors. And if my coworkers are here, don't worry, we're not going to implement this. You can keep on ordering as you have been. But essentially trying to even out the ordering process in hopes that it would affect when boxes are delivered from Ingram for us. So my first attempt went on the left. Basically, every week we want to order only children's, only young adult, or only adult. And it pretty much just split it up. Fine, we're just going to alternate between the three options. There is no reason, there's no order for how it does it. It just kind of picks and chooses between weeks 1, 2, and 3 with nothing ordered on week 4. And then I followed up asking it to alter that schedule to account for the bulk of our materials being children's materials, and then followed by adult materials and then young adults. Obviously, we have different item types within there. We have all of our AV equipment, audiobooks and playaways and whatnot within the children's. So all of those can be broken down further. But I gave it the percentages, hoping that it would try to, maybe plug in based off of those percentages. And while you can't see it here, young adult, because it was only 5%, ChatGPT actually completely excluded it from the list, because it didn't designate it as being substantial enough to give it a week, essentially. So little bit of a limitation here. I think a way that I could overcome this is by telling it, we order this many materials, children's materials, this many adult materials, this many young adults, and then giving it that more robust data set for that to then give me an actual schedule saying week 1, order children's, week 2, and so on and so forth, based on item counts that we've been processing. So I know that was a lot, so thank you. Feel free to start putting questions in the chat if you haven't already. You can feel free to reach out as well. Look for me on LinkedIn. There's my email information as well. Megan and I sit about 30 feet away from each other, so if you reach out to both of us, we can put our heads together and get back to you. And at this point, I will turn it over to Paige. Let me stop sharing my screen. I think I stopped sharing.
Yes, you did, and thank you. Thank you both. Okay, so listening to this presentation, there is so much that, wow, yeah, we can definitely do some more webinars focused on each of your topics and then some, but it's fascinating. And wow, just what you can do, the programming. Just type in what kind, programming for children and all of the suggestions it kicks out, and the Dewey Decimal assignment. Wow. Okay. Anyway, so I'm over here just being awed by all that ChatGPT can do, and I'm not seeing any questions at this point, other than
there was one about the custom chat personas that I was gonna address really quick. Yeah, so yes, the custom chat personas, creating those individual GPTs that you saw me toggle through on the left-hand side, that is with ChatGPT 4, so it's exclusive to that. But you can still have a very similar experience with 3.5 for free if you just tell it at the beginning of your prompt, I want you to act as a marketing consultant, a knowledgeable marketing consultant, and then give it your question. And until you tell it to change that persona, it will continue to act that way. So you can totally do that in 3.5 for free. It's just you need to tell it before you get started how you want it to respond, and that's in that QR code about like the art of the prompt.
Nice. And that's all I'm seeing so far, but this was great. Thank you, Matt. This was great to see some ways to actually use it in the day-to-day work life. This is being recorded, and it will be available on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel, as well as everybody who registered for this webinar will get sent the link to the recording and a link to the slide deck, so you can have that available as well, with all the links, QR codes, and contact information for Megan and Conrado. Let's see, if that is all, then I think we can close out. We didn't go too far over, and we did get a couple of minute late start, so I think we're right on schedule. And yeah, I think that this would be a worthwhile topic to revisit sometime in the upcoming months. And it's such a widely used resource that I think librarians are really very happy to see how it can be related to the library world. So, and without any further ado, I'll go ahead and close us out and give you back the rest of your day. Thank you again, Megan and Conrado from the Natrona County Library in Wyoming. I hope you have a wonderful day and keep up the good work. And thank you for everyone for joining us. Have a great day.